Well, hello, friends of the European spirit. I'd like to address Goethe's scathing critique of Platonism, which cuts a bit deeper than just critiquing Platonism per se, but really goes to the heart of the matter of what it is that we have inherited in the West, in Europe, in terms of our thinking, which we can see recurring, not just in the idealism of Goethe's time, but today, especially, I would say, in scientific model thinking or picture thinking in terms of scientific models. Now, I'm going to address Goethe's criticism of Platonism, Neoplatonism especially, and I'd also like to point out, though, perhaps a bit something that Goethe doesn't get into so much, which has to do with Platonism more than perhaps with Plato. Before I begin, I'd like to invite you all to go and take a look at my course on Goethe's Faust, the link to which you find in the description of this video just down here. It's a tour de force through Goethe's Faust Part 1 and also addresses many of the philosophical thoughts that are hidden, embedded in Faust, and which I regard really as the myth of modernity, how we became modern. That's how we should read Goethe's Faust. So now let's perhaps briefly summarize how Goethe sees um, how he understands Platonism. And then I'll just say a few words on how that relates to our modern scientific worldview. So, as you might know, that in Plato, as much as in Plotinus, anything that is ephemeral, anything that is of becoming, is in some sense 1 degree or 2 degrees or several degrees removed from. So any appearance is removed from its origin, let's say the idea or the form. So this particular desk or this particular chair I'm sitting on is in some sense just an appearance of chairness or tableness. And hence, in this sense, there's a certain lowering almost in quality, a reduction in quality that occurs here from the form proper to the thing or the appearance in front of us. And as we know, Goethe wanted to search, to trust, to seek, thought that we should trust the appearances and look for the original phenomenon rather than only look for stable, timeless, eternal forms which are qua original, always true or more true than any appearance could ever be, as we might understand Plato or Neoplatonism, perhaps more broadly speaking. And Goethe has to say on this matter that it could very well be that what the original, let's say, produces, to give you an analogy, um, someone's child might be better than their parents. So it's not to say that someone or something that's been produced or brought forth is merely of a lower degree, of a lower quality than the original. It could be that actually that which has been brought forth, that which has been generated, is in fact better, is in fact closer to the truth, is in fact more perfect than the producer, let's say, or that which brings forth uh, the thing in question. So this is how Goethe tries to have a sort of genetic, we could say perhaps, understanding uh, of becoming and of being, which he sees as lacking in Platonism, and which he sees as really something that we have inherited and which is so imbued in our being and thinking that we don't ever seem to question this. Now, what I mentioned before, if you think of our time today, we have certain scientific models, for example, the Standard Model in physics, etc. And those are ideal formats, ideal situations, ideal forms of what the world is supposed to look like. One could refer to these as Procrustes beds. Uh, into which nature has to fit, or the human being, for example, also animals, etc., and a certain social phenomena. Yeah, and ideology in some sense is also it was a bit fussier with ideology, but it's a similar way of not trusting the appearances, but framing them always already. Hence, it never becomes substantive, but is always already just framed in a certain way, and has to stand ready to reaffirm the scientific model. The model is, in some sense, really a recurrence of the Platonistic form. And ideally speaking, the world then would only function according to those models, uh, and the model stands higher as actuality, in a sense. It has more reality, it seems. So this would be how we, still we can critique metaphysics, etc., however much we want, uh, but we still haven't really come out of this. It's quite remarkable. Just as a side note, there's a videos on this here on my channel on Foucault's nominalism and its critique of power. Now, a nominalist like Foucault actually, at some point, really just himself becomes a hyper realist in the sense of an idealist, really. So someone who takes his concepts to be metaphysically real and absolute. And that, so we are, in a sense, always the children of Plato, not mere footnotes. And the task will be, with Goethe, we have someone who's painfully aware of this, a first step out of Platonism and Neoplatonism, for that matter, which is quite a bit more, let's just say, dangerous, because what Neoplatonism does is it posits the one as the principle of individuation outside the realm of actuality. And hence there's a collapse, there's a diremption, let's say, between existence and essence in Neoplatonism. And so things may exist individually, yes, but their essence is always already tied, not just tied to, but entirely dependent upon that abstract one. And Goethe, as he points out in his Maxims and Reflections, he in some sense cherishes or understands, appreciates at the very least, the idealists' focus on the one, but as an ordering principle, as he points out, and from which everything arises and towards which everything uh, returns, etc. Because this ordering principle, just looking at his text right now, um, would help. In a sense, he understands why contemporary idealists turn to this, because it helps getting out of materialism. But it doesn't help us, in fact, by trying to get to it doesn't actually show us a genuine unity of the chain of beings. Instead, what the threat here is that there's a certain reductio ad abstracto, a reduction towards the most abstract, which does not consider unity as in what is actually there, in what can actually be perceived, and what is phenomenally there. It doesn't trust the appearances, in a sense. You see, so this abstract ordering principle is the highest abstraction, which, however, becomes the essence of everything that exists. And this he sees, Goethe sees playing out again and again. And I think, as I've mentioned a couple of times before, with Goethe, we should actually be able to find a, at least the beginning of a philosophy of the future, which is to say, a philosophy that takes seriously the challenge of Platonism and especially Neoplatonism, but is already yonder, is already outside that uh, that heritage and that weight, that in some sense you could say baggage. So again, thank you very much for listening. And once you're ready to really read Goethe and Goethe's Faust more seriously, do take my course, the link to it in the description of this video. And I'm also very grateful for any in any way that you could support the work on this channel. Thank you so much.